I don't talk about it much since it's so subjective, but music is kind of a big deal for me. It can drive your emotions into any direction if you pay enough attention to it, and I imagine it's the same for a lot of people. It's also compatible with other activities, serving as a background element or something. Of course, you can also just plain enjoy it as its own thing. Perhaps you've heard of AudioSurf, a racing puzzle sort of thing where you feed it an audio file and then it does some techno-magical bollocks that generates a racing track. And that now received a new patch after 5 years and an entire sequel right when I decided to mention it in a video. But I bet fewer people heard of Symphony, which has a similar idea but in a different package. Released in August of 2012 by Empty Clip Studios, Symphony also takes your favorite music and vomits out a level for you, but throws in a story and some progression. The game begins with a pair of lightsabers spewing some schlock about how it is going to consume your world through the power of music. By controlling the minds of your favorite composers and the Symphony of Souls, this entity can supposedly enter and take control of your world. Only you can stop this menace and its demons and ultimately restore the Symphony of Souls to its rightful form, by playing Galaga on steroids. You control this dinky little bird ship and destroy whatever enemies show up while also collecting the inspiration they drop on death. Inspiration is then used to unlock and upgrade weapons, which are generated based on the music you feed the game. By scanning your computer's folders and based on some analysis algorithm, it generates a stage with 6 different difficulty levels, each one earning you more kudos than the previous. Symphony does come with its own music in case you're some sort of weirdo without any music on your drives, but you're obviously supposed to use your favorite tracks, liberate your music and all that. What's also interesting to think about is that it's your favorite music on the line, adding a layer of intimacy to the game. You have more reason to beat this asshole because it's the music you care about. And because of the intensity changing based on how intense the music is, there's this natural escalation to the gameplay that creates short moments of absolute awesome where the high point of the song syncs up with the chaos on screen. Blue is calm, purple is medium, and red is balls to the wall. A lot of developers struggle with creating an automated level generation algorithm for their games, but Symphony shows a simple yet effective alternative. Of course, Symphony's gameplay is also pretty simple and very small in scope, so with more complex games this probably wouldn't work quite as well, but still. Anyway, each music is assigned an item, unlocked by clearing the stage and by paying up some inspiration. A select few items are pickups, which randomly appear while shmupping and grant effects like temporary invincibility or a big boom. The rest of the items are weapons, which can be equipped in one of the ship's 4 slots. You start with 4 basic blasters, but you will soon find a number of other options with different firing patterns. Each weapon's angle can be adjusted if you want them to aim at the sides or behind, which can prove useful when some sneaky beaky enemies rush your ass. You can also change how they are fired, like setting half to the left click and the other half to the right click, or even setting them to fire automatically. If you have enough inspiration and kudos, you can also upgrade them up to 5 times, increasing their damage, changing their color and sometimes even slightly altering their firing patterns. If you're lucky, you might even find a Furia grade version, which is basically the same thing but more powerful. Keep in mind, however, that while the ship will only go down if the centerpiece is hit, each of the 4 weapon slots themselves can be destroyed and rendered unusable until recovered by picking up inspiration. Your ship's firepower also has a neat balancing quirk, together with the difficulties. The stronger your ship, the less points you score, which means that you have to play better to reach the score targets. And while you do have infinite lives, you do not have infinite points, and the penalty increases with each difficulty. Every once in a while a demon shows up, and defeating it will restore part of the Symphony of Souls and unlock the next difficulty. You don't have to play in higher difficulties if you don't want to, and indeed the last one does get a bit ridiculous, but the option is always there. I'm not sure how exactly you progress in the story besides just playing the game, but higher difficulties simply award you more inspiration and kudos. They don't unlock new weapons or items, which is a bit of a problem despite the story only taking like 8 or so hours to beat, but I'll get to that soon. Anyway, the presentation might look like some pretentious art house clusterfuck given the references and liberal usage of musical terms such as crescendo, pianissimo and shotgun, but it does it with flair. I'd compare it to something like Tetris Effect, where the visuals make you feel like you're tripping balls as you pull those sick flick shots and pro gamer moves on hostile geometrical shapes. The game uses vector-styled graphics that bring up images of certain old arcade games, but with a dose of technology on top. It's a constant light show with particles and flashes all over the place, coupled with a reflective surface that makes everything look stylish as balls. Oh, and it helps with depth perception too. And kudos to the developers for not just throwing everything into the mix with a complete disregard for readability. Pickups use contrasting colors and most enemy projectiles have easily identifiable effects, so even though the gameplay results in an orgy of visual splendor, it's usually not a problem. Yes, despite the developers' best efforts, it can still turn into a huge mess, but not frequently. Which is quite ironic, considering that these are the same people who made this noxious afterthought of a menu system. You can sort your music by artist, album, and, well, not sort it at all. Sounds fine so far, considering that this only resulted in, like, several thousand entries. But when exploring these entries, you get a squished up list that only displays 3 tracks at a time and doesn't distinguish between duplicates or files that aren't even strictly music. Maybe the developers assumed that everyone has a perfectly organized collection with 100% accurate tags, or that nobody downloaded countless things from places like YouTube over the years, or that the player wouldn't be a turbo weeb who listens to niche indie albums. All of this could have been avoided if the game simply allowed you to point directly towards an audio file. I mean, the game doesn't generate the levels until after you select a new track anyway, and it doesn't distinguish between different files with the exact same tags either, so yeah. It's probably too late at this point, but integrating services like Spotify could also give players access to a large selection of music with standardized tags, thus also solving the problem of the online leaderboards being worthless because everyone needs the exact same tags on their music. As for the core mechanics, they are perfectly fine, but the game has a lack of content to actually play with. There is only 6 or 7 regular enemy types in total, and the handful of weapons available can all be seen in the first hour. Each of the 5 pages of the Symphony of Souls features a different demon boss, but it's slightly modified and reused 1 or 2 times each, and there is no unique final boss at the end. Enemies also don't evolve in terms of how they are used. From start to finish, they use the same projectiles, the same formations and the same movement patterns, instead just having more health the higher the difficulty, making the first 4 difficulties feel like damage walls until you upgrade your weapons. And because the online leaderboards are so unreliable, you don't even get the sense of pride and accomplishment that comes with being the world's #1 player of Chi-Chi2BGM016. There's also this quirk with the controls. The game is locked to 60 FPS by default, but this can be easily changed. The only problem, if it can even be called one, is how the cursor speed seems to scale with the frame rate. The default mouse sensitivity is much slower at 60 FPS than at 144. But this isn't a problem because even at 60 FPS you can just increase the mouse sensitivity and get the same effect. The real thing in question here is that this makes playing with a mouse vastly superior to playing with a controller. Mouse control is super fast and responsive because the ship follows the mouse cursor exactly, enabling flick shots from one edge of the playfield to the other. Not so much with the controller. But either way, yeah, Symphony probably isn't a game that will last for long gaming sessions, but it's worth checking out. Especially since it recently got a permanent price cut to $5 and runs just fine on toasters. There's also a DLC that adds support for M4A and AAC formats, but you can just convert your files to MP3 or whatever if you really want. There's currently some problem with the QuickTime support anyway. Thankfully, Empty Clip Studios hasn't just vanished like a classical student at a heavy metal concert, having worked on a variety of things over the years. Released last year, Mind Symphony seems to follow the same aesthetics but with more relaxed gameplay, I guess? I don't know, it's iOS exclusive right now. They have also shown in-development footage of Symphony Worlds, a pretty cool looking project which seems to take the basic concept into a whole new dimension where your music creates entire worlds. So boy oh boy, I sure hope it actually gets released someday.